Rintaro's story kicks off with a heartfelt confession to his crush. However, despite admitting she likes him, the girl recoils at the idea of dating him, leaving Rintaro utterly devastated. As he trudges home in defeat, his friend tags along, unable to resist poking fun at him. It turns out this is Rintaro's 100th rejection, an achievement so absurd that his friend can't help but wonder how he's managed to ask out 100 girls despite only just finishing middle school. This prompts Rintaro to recall his first ever confession, made when he was a mere 8 months old. Rintaro is desperate to experience what it's like to have a girlfriend, and his friend, baffled by his repeated failures, questions how someone with good looks and excellent grades keeps striking out. This only fuels Rintaro's frustration, but his friend parts ways, wishing him better luck in high school. Still yearning for love, Rintaro visits a shrine, offering a prayer to the god of love, pleading for a girlfriend in high school. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the donation box, and a face emerges from within. The man introduces himself as the shrine's god, spreading his wings as he steps out. He informs Rintaro that not only will he find his soulmate in high school, but he's actually destined to have 100 of them, giving him no shortage of options. Overjoyed but skeptical, Rintaro makes a bold threat. If this prophecy turns out to be a lie, he'll personally see to the shrine's destruction. Fast forward 1 month, and the first day of high school arrives. On his way to the classroom, Rintaro accidentally bumps into 2 girls, Inda and Akari. The moment their eyes meet, an electrifying jolt runs through them, leaving Rintaro wondering if these 2 could be the soulmates the shrine god had promised. As he reaches out to help them up, Akari suddenly clutches her ankle, dramatically claiming she's injured and requesting his assistance to the nurse's office. Overwhelmed with guilt, Rintaro immediately bursts into tears, devastated at the thought of harming his destined partner. Akari, however, finds his exaggerated concern endearing. Just as he steadies her, Inda, unwilling to let Akari have all the attention, dramatically follows suit, insisting that she too has twisted her ankle. Without hesitation, Rintaro blames himself and starts hitting his own head for hurting them. The girls, startled by his extreme reaction, instinctively stand up to stop him, only to realize they've just exposed themselves. Realizing their mistake, they quickly resume their act, pretending to be injured once again. Rintaro proceeds to escort them to the nurse's office, though somehow, it feels more like he's the one being carried. As they walk, the girls lose their balance multiple times, leading to a chaotic scuffle over him, both clinging onto him for dear life. Amidst the disorder, Rintaro introduces himself, and in turn, learns that they are all in the same class. As they reach the nurse's office, 2 other girls pass by, chatting about a courtyard full of pink leaf clovers. According to them, if someone confesses while holding a pink 4-leaf clover, their confession is guaranteed to be accepted. Upon hearing this, Inda and Akari instantly bolt away at full speed, leaving Rintaro dumbfounded. Weren't their legs supposed to be injured? Hours later, long after school has ended, Rintaro stays behind, assisting a teacher in searching for a missing contact lens. As Rintaro prepares to head home, he wonders if he'll run into the girls again. Just as the thought crosses his mind, he spots them in the courtyard. Inda is hunched over, scanning the grass, clearly searching for something. Curious, Rintaro approaches to check on her progress. Caught off guard, Inda jumps and immediately scrambles to act casual, pretending she wasn't just looking for the legendary 4-leaf clover. Noticing that Hikari isn't around, Rintaro offers Inda a drink. At first, she hesitates, too flustered to accept, leading Rintaro to assume she must find him weird since they barely know each other. But before he can dwell on it, Inda suddenly snatches the drink from his hand, insisting she'll finish it all so it doesn't go to waste. Amused, he tells her she should head home since it's getting late. Inda glares at him, refusing to be bossed around, but then quietly thanks him for the drink. That's when it hits Rintaro. She's a classic tsundere. Without warning, Inda dashes off, and moments later, Hikari returns. Rintaro offers her a drink as well, but Hikari has a different idea. She suggests they share it, aiming for an indirect kiss by claiming she can't finish it on her own. Anticipating this move, Rintaro smugly presents her with a smaller bottle he bought just for her. Unfazed, Hikari doubles down, insisting that even the smaller one is still too much. With a sigh, he agrees and takes a sip first before handing it to her. However, the second Hikari reaches for it, she panics, fumbles the bottle, and spills the drink all over the ground. Rintaro, completely missing the real reason for her reaction, assumes she must be upset because she really liked that drink. To make up for it, he offers her his handkerchief to clean up, but instead of taking it, Hikari grabs his hand instead. Heart-pounding, she confesses her love to him, saying she had to do it quickly because there's someone else who likes him too. Rintaro is overjoyed, his first ever confession, but before he can even process it, Inda suddenly reappears. Just as Rintaro is trying to process Hikari's sudden confession, Inda bursts back onto the scene, her arms full of drinks. She had gone out of her way to buy them as repayment for the one he gave her. But the moment she sees Hikari asking him out, her expression shifts from surprise to irritation. Scowling, she tells Hikari to get in line, making it clear she isn't about to let her skip ahead. Rintaro freezes, stunned. Wait, does that mean Inda likes me too? Inda immediately tries to backpedal, fumbling for an excuse, but the pressure mounts until she finally cracks. Gritting her teeth, she begrudgingly admits her feelings. Now both girls are standing before him, awaiting his response. Without hesitation, they demand to know who he's going to choose. Sweating bullets, Rintaro stalls for time, telling them he'll give them his answer tomorrow. But as the night drags on, he racks his brain, completely unable to make a decision. Both girls are incredible in their own way, and no matter how much he thinks about it, he just can't choose between them. Desperate for guidance, he returns to the shrine and calls out to the god of love. The winged deity emerges from his donation box yet again, and Rintaro frantically explains his dilemma. But instead of helping, the god drops an even bigger bombshell. Both Inda and Hikari are his soulmates. There's no choosing between them, because they're both meant to be with him. Confused, Rintaro asks what people normally do when they meet more than one soulmate. The god shrugs and casually informs him that most people don't have multiple soulmates. Sensing something is off, Rintaro presses him further, until the god sheepishly confesses. Apparently, when Rintaro was born, the god had been distracted watching TV and accidentally assigned him 100 soulmates instead of just one. Rintaro feels his soul leave his body. He's doomed. But before he can even begin to process this divine blunder, the god delivers the final nail in the coffin. If a person isn't with their soulmate, they die from heartbreak. In other words, if Rintaro doesn't find a way to be with all 100 of them, they won't survive. His nightmare is only just beginning. The thought of either Inda or Hikari dying because of his decision only makes Rintaro's dilemma worse. But then, an idea strikes him. What if he rejects both of them and secretly dates them behind each other's backs? It seems like the perfect solution, until he realizes he's way too soft-hearted to actually pull it off. By the time morning rolls around, the girls meet up with Rintaro, only to find him looking absolutely wrecked, as if he had spent the entire night wrestling with his own emotions, which, to be fair, he had. Mustering his courage, he finally gives them his answer. He wants to date both of them. Inda is floored, barely able to process his shameless confession. It turns out that, in the end, Rintaro just couldn't bring himself to lie to them. He comes clean. He loves them both and swears to do everything in his power to make them the happiest girls in the world. The girls are seconds away from rejecting his insane proposal. But before they can, Rintaro suddenly pulls out 2 pink 4-leaf clovers. As it turns out, he had spent the entire night searching for them. Inda scoffs, calling him an idiot for believing in such a ridiculous superstition. But Hikari quickly reminds her that they were the ones who believed in it first. Inda stubbornly refuses to accept being two-timed, but Rintaro explains that he didn't get the flowers to manipulate them into saying yes. He just saw how hard they were looking for them, and he wanted to make them happy. The girls completely short-circuit. Hikari, too flustered to resist, caves first, deciding that two-timing with Rintaro would be far better than getting rejected altogether. Inda refuses to let Hikari steal him away, so despite all her complaints, she gives in as well. Hikari immediately teases her for changing her mind, while Rintaro swears to cherish them both. But in the back of his mind, he can't help but wonder, what about his other 98 soulmates? The next morning, Rintaro is overwhelmed with happiness, finally experiencing what it's like to have a girlfriend. Unfortunately, he's so lost in his joy that he ends up expressing his excitement to a pole. When the girls arrive, Inda stares in horror, questioning why exactly he's whispering sweet nothings to an inanimate object. Rintaro, unfazed, says he was just too happy to contain himself. Inda, embarrassed but trying to be cool, tells him that if he needs someone to talk to, she's right there. However, the second she realizes what she just said, she turns beet red and completely shuts down. Hikari takes full advantage of the situation, grabbing Rintaro's hand without hesitation. He's instantly overwhelmed by the sensation of actually holding hands with a girl, and Inda, not about to let Hikari get ahead of her, quickly grows jealous. Without thinking, he reaches for her hand as well. Inda puts on her best, not impressed face, but the three of them happily walk together to school. As soon as they arrive, chaos erupts. A boy is sprinting through the halls, with the school's vice principal hot on his heels. Hikari quickly explains that the vice principal is notorious for enforcing school rules, especially when it comes to running in the hallways. If she catches a student breaking the rule, she doesn't just scold them, she kisses them as punishment. Rintaro watches in horror, thinking there would be actual emotional damage. Hikari, clearly enjoying his reaction, adds that the vice principal is a former star sprinter, meaning that no one has ever escaped her clutches. Then, out of nowhere, she changes the subject, turning to Rintaro with a playful smirk. By the way, she asks, have you ever kissed anyone before? Rintaro, still trying to recover from the mental image of the vice principal chasing students down with kisses, blurts out the truth. No, he hasn't. They're his first ever girlfriends. The moment those words leave his mouth, both Inda and Hikari freeze. It suddenly dawns on them, whoever acts first gets his first kiss. And neither of them plans on losing. During lunch, the three spend time together. And while Inda gets momentarily distracted by a cat, Hikari takes the opportunity to sneak an egg roll into Rintaro's mouth. The taste is so good that he literally starts crying, overwhelmed by the flavor. Inda, instantly jealous, refuses to be outdone. She reveals that she also made something for him, homemade cookies. However, her attempt to feed him is significantly less graceful, as she ends up accidentally jabbing him in the eye. Despite the minor assault, Rintaro eats the cookie anyway, praising it as amazing. Before Inda can bask in the moment, Hikari pulls out a Baki snack, but as she opens it, she realizes that both ends have already been broken off. This creates a dilemma. How can she feed him without getting her hands dirty? The answer? She feeds him directly from her mouth. As Hikari leans in with the snack between her lips, Rintaro finds himself utterly mesmerized. She's way too cute. Sensing his reaction, Hikari playfully bites down on the snack, inching even closer to him. Inda, noticing his reddened eyes, suddenly grows concerned, thinking he might be coming down with a cold. However, rather than offering logical solutions, she grabs onto him, confidently declaring that the best way to recover is to pass it on. In other words, she's about to kiss him. Hikari isn't having any of it. She quickly blocks Inda, arguing that they can't be sure he even has a cold yet. Instead, she proposes a more scientific method, checking his temperature through lip contact, claiming it's a family tradition. Inda, not about to let Hikari get the upper hand, takes a more aggressive approach. She decides that knocking Rintaro out and giving him mouth-to-mouth would be far more efficient. Hikari, horrified, immediately shoves her away. The two girls glare at each other, completely at odds. Meanwhile, Rintaro, still reeling from everything, finally realizes the truth. They weren't concerned about his health. They were just trying to kiss him. Inda immediately denies it, but her guilty expression makes it painfully obvious. Rintaro, despite his usual denseness, is stunned. They actually want to kiss him? Rather than panicking, he surprises them both by offering to do it himself, admitting that he's been wanting to kiss them too. However, the moment is quickly shattered when Hikari points out the major problem. He has to choose who he will kiss first. That, of course, sends him into another heated argument. Before things escalate further, Rintaro stops them, saying that he already came up with a solution. In fact, he had spent the previous night thinking about it because he was just that excited. After much deliberation, he devised the perfect plan to keep things fair. For his first kiss, they will never know who was kissed first. That way, they'll both have an equal chance of being his first. In his heart, he'll consider each of their kisses as his first. The girls are understandably skeptical. How could they possibly make it a mystery? That's when Rintaro lays out his plan. Step 1. He wears a mask. Step 2. They cover their ears so they won't hear who gets kissed first. Step 3. They roll a dice to randomize their standing positions. Step 4. He kisses them without knowing who is who. It's foolproof, or at least it should be. To ensure complete fairness, Rintaro adds another step. After the first kiss, he'll return to his original position, and the girls will once again randomize their places. That way, by the end, even he won't know who he kissed first. Hikari immediately loves the idea, but Inda remains suspicious, wondering if there's a way for him to cheat. Rintaro, as if anticipating this, unveils his ultimate safeguard, a pinky promise. Inda is unimpressed, calling it the dumbest solution ever, but Rintaro solemnly swears that if he breaks the promise, he'll stick a needle in his eye. Faced with his absolute conviction, the girls reluctantly agree, and the plan is set in motion. However, just as they prepare for their first kiss, disaster strikes. A sudden gust of wind lifts Inda's skirt, and at that exact moment, the stray cat from earlier decides to latch onto it, its claws sinking into the fabric. Inda naturally assumes the worst. Thinking Rintaro is the one touching her, she instinctively kicks him into oblivion. As he lies on the ground, dazed and confused, Inda furiously continues pummeling him. It's only when her headphones slip off that she realizes the truth. The real culprit was the cat. Feeling guilty, but not guilty enough to apologize, they decide to try again. Unfortunately, fate seems to have a personal vendetta against Rintaro's first kiss. Every single attempt ends in catastrophe. By the time their plan has completely fallen apart, everyone is frustrated. Inda, in a huff, declares that the entire idea was flawed from the start. Hikari, insulted, fires back, and before long, they're full-on fighting over who Rintaro actually belongs to. Rintaro, completely overwhelmed, does the only thing he can think of. He takes all the blame. He blames himself for being too inexperienced, too reckless, and ultimately for causing them to fight. Then, without warning, he sprints away. However, in his moment of blind panic, he makes a huge mistake. He yells out for the vice principal, and she immediately appears. Rintaro freezes in terror as the legendary school enforcer pins him down, ready to dish out punishment for daring to run in the halls. Just as he prepares for his untimely demise, Inda rushes in and stops her. Hikari, ever the schemer, quickly pretends to see a school inspector in the distance. The moment the vice principal hears this, her entire demeanor changes. Panic-stricken, she scurries away without a second thought. As the dust settles, the girls demand to know why Rintaro acted so recklessly. He takes a deep breath and confesses. It's because he loves them. Not just one of them, both of them. And if them fighting is the price of his first kiss, then he'd rather throw it all away. Hearing this, both Inda and Hikari suddenly grow quiet. Then, in perfect unison, they turn to each other and say the same thing. You can kiss him first. Rintaro stares in shock. After all that fighting, after all that chaos, they're both suddenly willing to give up their chance? But as he looks at them, he realizes something. They're both smiling. They finally understand. They really, truly love him. Rintaro pulls both girls into a tight embrace, a sudden idea forming in his mind. With a hopeful smile, he proposes something bold, a three-way kiss. At first, Inda and Hikari freeze, their faces heating up as they realize what that actually means. Kissing him was one thing, but kissing each other? That's a whole different level of embarrassment. However, after a few exchanged glances and hesitant nods, they both finally agree. And so, after all the chaos, the three finally share their first kiss. The next day, Rintaro and the girls find themselves in the library. Hikari eagerly searches for a cookbook, determined to make even better meals for Rintaro. Inda, however, spots a book titled "The Way to a Man's Heart is Through His Stomach" and immediately grabs it. Rintaro slips away to explore the library on his own. As he scans the bookshelves, he unexpectedly bumps into another girl. The moment their eyes meet, a familiar shock runs through him. His heart skips a beat. Could she be another one of his soulmates? Before he can say anything, the girl takes a step back. Rintaro soon realizes she's the librarian. She doesn't speak a word, but instead flips open a small book, pointing at specific phrases to communicate. At first, Rintaro is a little confused. Does this mean they're not allowed to talk in the library? The girl tilts her head, then writes, "What book are you looking for?" Not wanting to break any rules, Rintaro tries to mime out that he's looking for a funny story. The girl watches his awkward gestures for a moment before calmly flipping her book to a new phrase. "Why aren't you talking?" Rintaro blinks. She hesitates for a moment before apologizing, then turns to leave. Before she can walk away, Rintaro gently stops her. He insists that she's the one he wants to help him. When he asks for recommendations for a romance story with a good ending, the librarian nods and starts pulling books from the shelves. Rintaro waits patiently, but his eyes widen in horror when she finally turns around, holding an enormous stack of books. His soul leaves his body. The girl, noticing his shock, quickly apologizes, telling him he doesn't have to take all of them. But Rintaro, not wanting to waste the effort she put in, declares that he'll take them all. With a proud smile, he confidently walks up to the checkout counter. And then, his library card gets denied, so he's unable to borrow any of the books. Feeling defeated, he prepares to put them all back. But then, the librarian does something unexpected. She offers him her own personal book. Rintaro is genuinely touched by the gesture and gratefully accepts it. Before he leaves, he realizes he still doesn't know her name. The girl silently pulls out her ID card and holds it up. Her name is Shizuka.